If Guyana, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago were to unite into a single country, it would immediately become one of the most interesting experiments in the Caribbean. These are three independent countries today, all English-speaking, with close historical ties and strong economic links. The idea of merging them into one nation and running them under a federal system similar to the United States raises the question of what such a union would look like in terms of economic power, social integration, and international standing. The reason we focus on these three in particular and not the entire Caribbean is because they already share some critical features that make them natural candidates for deeper integration. They all speak English as the main language, which immediately removes one of the biggest barriers to unification. They also share similar colonial histories, with institutions and systems shaped by British governance. In addition, their economies already interact frequently. Oil from Guyana, gas and asphalt from Trinidad, and refining capacity and logistics from Jamaica are all connected. People from these three nations are already moving, working, and trading with each other. So while it might sound like a far-fetched idea, the logic of linking them is not without foundation. Looking at what each country brings to the table makes the case even clearer. Guyana is currently the fastest-growing economy in the Western Hemisphere. In 2024, its economy expanded by more than 43%, almost entirely because of new oil production. Guyana's proven oil reserves are massive, with over 11 billion barrels of oil equivalent and significant gas fields as well. The country also has vast stretches of land and natural resources that remain underdeveloped. Trinidad and Tobago, on the other hand, has long been one of the richest Caribbean nations on a per capita basis. Its economy is dominated by natural gas, petrochemicals, and oil. It also has the world's largest natural asphalt lake, giving it a unique resource base. Jamaica is different, with less dependence on oil and gas but greater strength in logistics, tourism, and culture. Jamaica already has the largest population of the three and is developing into a logistics hub for the region. It is also already refining petroleum products, including imports from Trinidad, meaning the economies are already intertwined in practice. Together, the three countries balance each other out in ways that could make for a strong, diversified economic bloc. The combined GDP of these three countries in 2024 gives a good picture of what the new state would look like. Guyana's GDP was around $25.8 billion. Jamaica's was about $20.6 billion. Trinidad and Tobago's was close to $26.5 billion. Add them together and the new country would have a GDP of roughly $72.9 billion. In a Caribbean context, this would be enormous. It would immediately make this country one of the largest economies in the region. For perspective, this new state would have a GDP larger than the Dominican Republic in 2010, and while smaller than larger Latin American economies like Colombia or Chile, it would sit comfortably in the middle tier of the hemisphere. More importantly, this $72.9 billion would not be built on just one sector. Instead, it would be spread across oil, gas, asphalt, refining, logistics, and services. That diversification would give it stability that none of the three currently enjoy on their own. On a per capita basis, the impact would also be notable. With Jamaica's population of 2.8 million, Trinidad and Tobago's 1.5 million, and Guyana's nearly 800,000, the combined population would be about 5.1 million people. Dividing the $72.9 billion GDP across that population gives an average per capita GDP of roughly $14,300. That figure is higher than what Jamaica currently has, which sits at around $7,500 per person, and lower than Guyana's recent oil-driven per capita figure of $32,000. But as an average, it reflects the power of balancing out the wealth from oil and gas with the larger populations and service economies. In short, people in Jamaica would immediately benefit from the oil wealth of Guyana and the gas wealth of Trinidad. At the same time, Guyana would benefit from having a much larger domestic consumer market and workforce. The creation of a single central bank and a single currency would also transform the financial landscape. Instead of three small, separate currencies with limited international recognition, the new union could establish a unified currency backed by oil revenues, gas exports, and service inflows. That currency would likely be stronger and more stable than any of the three on their own. Investors would be more confident in it, and it could even attract regional use beyond the borders of the new country. At the same time, combining the stock exchanges of Jamaica, which already has one of the more active stock markets in the Caribbean, with the financial power of Trinidad and the new capital inflows to Guyana, would make the new stock market more liquid and attractive. International investors would see it as a larger, more viable market to participate in. For ordinary people, one of the most immediate benefits would be the free movement of people and capital. Traveling from Kingston to Port of Spain or from Georgetown to Montego Bay would become no different than traveling between states in the US. No passport checks, no visa requirements, just domestic travel. Students could enroll in universities across the three states without needing to apply as foreigners. Workers could freely seek employment wherever opportunities were strongest. Investors could move money and open businesses across all three without the current restrictions. This kind of integration would make life easier, especially for Jamaicans who currently have a harder time accessing opportunities in Guyana's oil sector or in Trinidad's energy sector. The population balance is also important. Jamaica contributes the largest number of people, more than half of the combined total. Guyana contributes the most land and natural resources. Trinidad contributes the most developed energy infrastructure and one of the highest per capita incomes. Together, they form a triangle of population, resources, and wealth that covers most of what a strong, balanced economy requires. And because they all speak English, the integration process would avoid many of the challenges that unions in other regions face when different languages come into play. In other words, history has shown that geography alone does not prevent unification if the political will and economic logic are there. On the international stage, such a union would carry more weight than the three do individually. A population of over 5 million with an economy of nearly $73 billion would give it a stronger voice in organizations like the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and even within CARICOM itself. The new country could become the natural leader of the Caribbean region, using its size and wealth to drive regional policy. Its energy resources would give it leverage with larger powers, and its tourism and logistics hubs would keep it connected to global trade and travel. Instead of being three small voices at the table, they would be one stronger, more unified presence. Of course, there would also be challenges. The biggest would be political integration. Who would lead this new union? How would power be shared among the three states? Balancing the needs of Jamaica's larger population with the wealth of Guyana and Trinidad would not be easy. There would also be questions of economic inequality. People in Jamaica might expect their living standards to rise quickly, while people in Guyana might worry about sharing their new oil wealth. Trinidadians used to a relatively high per capita income might fear being dragged down by the others. These are not small challenges, and they would require careful planning and compromise to manage. Still, the potential advantages are hard to ignore. Together, the three economies would no longer be fragile, small states, vulnerable to every global shock. Instead, they would be part of a larger, more diversified economy, with energy, tourism, logistics, and services all balancing each other out. Their financial systems would be deeper, their stock market more attractive, and their currency stronger. Their people would have more freedom to move, learn, and work across a larger space. Their international voice would be louder and harder to ignore. In conclusion, uniting Guyana, Jamaica, and Trinidad into a single country would create a Caribbean superstate unlike anything the region has seen before. With a population of about 5.1 million, a combined GDP of nearly $73 billion, and a single central banking currency, it would stand out as an economic powerhouse in the Caribbean. The strengths of each state complement the weaknesses of the others, making the union stronger than the sum of its parts. Yes, there would be political challenges and questions of fairness, but the economic logic is clear. It would be a diverse, resource-rich, and globally connected country with the potential to transform not just itself, but the wider region. The question is whether such a union could actually be achieved, or whether it would remain an interesting thought experiment.